Here we go.
We are live.
Hello, Facebook. Hello, Instagram. It's Allie, Nikki, and we have a special friend today, Carl.
Special friend. I'm a special friend. I'm a cousin. I am so happy to have my two wonderful cousins here working with us, Nikki, Farming Grapes, and Allie of representing the Wente Vineyards brand and making us better every day. So how lucky am I to work with these two awesome ladies?
Woo!
Yeah.
We're pretty lucky to work with this awesome guy. Great teacher.
And thank you. And I am pretty lucky to live in this awesome house that was built in the 1880s by Louis Mel. He was a gentleman French farmer, came to California, and he was instrumental in working with Charles Wetmore and bringing the cuttings back from Chateau Yquem of Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon right here to this property. So built in the 1880s, and I've been tinkering with this house since I moved in 2002. Love to build. There's all sorts of redwood. Hi, Paula. There's all sorts of redwood from old tanks that I use in terms of the building. See the instruments up on the walls. And so absolutely love my home. So happy to be able to have a little phase of lifting of the shelter in place so I can have my two wonderful cousins come over and hang out a little bit, because it's been me and my dogs, and I get to see my wife every once in a while. So very happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here.
We're happy to be in your house.
We're
happy to have you in your house.
How fun is this? Everyone, you're getting a little peek into Carl's house. As you can see in the back, he has instruments everywhere. So music is definitely something that is super important in his life. And I would just say, like, it's a part of you.
Absolutely. And
It's like
just
I'm working the spot on the
totally is.
Yeah.
You know, the music is a great catharsis and a great way to escape. And I find myself when I'm diving into winemaking, I generally go home and get creative musically, and like the parallels of how it comes together, of the flavors, the textures, what makes up the sensory journey of a glass of wine, a sip of wine, and the parallels with making, creating music, recording, collaborating with other people. So it's just a cool part, and I love it. So
we already have a question from Linda, who would like to know how you named your wonderful wines Nth Degree.
Well, I didn't name the wines Nth Degree. Actually, their father, Phil, it's his idea. And actually, the first song I ever wrote was called Phil's Head. And it's because the inspirational ideas, like he sort of looks at the world in a totally different way. Like he can look up at a cattle ranch and see a golf course, and 10 years later, there's a golf course there. He can look up there and see, okay, that's the road direction that I would plant these vineyards on this hill and the lights. And so we were talking about it when I got back to the winery in May of 2002 to really, the family said, go and make wine that's as good as any in our region. So Livermore Valley has an incredible history, and we've been farming grapes here since 1883, but other people have been farming grapes here even longer than that. And it's a great place to grow world-class wine grapes. And then so the family said, go choose our best vineyard blocks, work with our vineyard manager, work with your Uncle Phil, work with the winemaking team, and then set up a small lot winery and really just make the best possible wine that you can to showcase how awesome Livermore is. And so the 2002 vintage went out there and was just working, and then able to get through the vintage. There was one time during that vintage in 2002 where me and Claude Boba, I doubt he's going to be witnessing this, Claude, but if you're out there, hello. We worked a 22-hour day. We went home for half an hour, showered, and came back and worked an 18-hour day just to get through it all. And it was just sort of just really this grind of, you only get one chance a year when you're making wine, and we recognize that, and really just, you got to lean in. And main reason we had to do that is because I thought the press fit 7 tons of grapes, but it only fit 7 bins of grapes. That's 3.5 tons. And so we were out there all night pressing grapes. And as Nikki knows, farming grapes, like once you pick them, you gotta process them all the way through. So imagine that mistake. And we just took it in the chin, but made an awesome wine that year. Back to it then, after the vintage, during the vintage, getting towards the end of the vintage, Uncle Phil came into the office one day and he said, you know what? Carl and his team are out there doing everything to the nth degree to try and make the best possible wines. Why don't we just call these wines the Nth Degree by Wente Vineyards? And I thought, there's, gosh darn it, Phil, and your ideas and how you come up with things. It's so awesome. But ultimately, and then I'm a engineer, my undergrad's in engineering, and I just love the concept that there's always N+1. Right? The moment that we stop and stand on our laurels and say this game, this dance, this artisan trade of winemaking. We say it's done. No, you got to continue to pursue excellence and continue. And I always love there's N+1 of how you can get better in any given year.
So before, we're going to have a song soon, but before we get there, I heard someone, or I didn't hear at all, someone wrote in a comment, what's the biggest risk you've taken in your winemaking? It's a tough question.
Tough question.
Tough question. Who asked it?
Biggest risk in winemaking.
Nick.
Changing
Nick.
to
Nick
Nick
Graditi? No,
my husband?
No, Graditi. Nick Graditi.
Biggest risk in winemaking was sticking to the guns on doing natural fermentation in Chardonnay on the first vintage out. And after I graduated my undergrad, then I went to Davis and I ended up getting 2 masters, one in horticulture, focusing on grape farming, and one in enology or food science, focusing on enology. And then I went to Peter Michael Winery and worked a vintage. And at Peter Michael Winery, there was no yeast, there was no outside yeast in the entire winery for the whole vintage. So everything was a natural fermentation. And then so came back in 2002 and really said, no, we're going to do natural fermentation on the Chardonnays and really sort of explore that. And it was something that really we hadn't been doing too much of at Wente up until that point. And I still really only like to do it on Chardonnays, because Chardonnays that are surly aged. And so after the fermentation, that yeast will settle down in that barrel and you get this creamy, yeasty, nutty, dough-like characteristic that'll come through. So I think that was sort of one of the risks out there. Was it's a gamble, but ultimately it was a rewarding gamble.
Tell us about the Front Porch Music Festival, what that all is.
Front Porch Music Festival, we miss you too. Front Porch Music Festival is something that we're now in like year 12, and it's been going on. And it started out with a bunch of friends of mine at the estate winery, some bales of hay, some plywood on top of the bales of hay, our own sound system, and just making music. And there were about 3 bands the first year, and now we're up to about 10 bands come through, multiple stages and the likes. And it's really just that celebration of music and wine and the good things that go along with it: good food, good conversation, good people, and good time. So
I see. Okay, one more. I'm a new Nth Degree member. Does it really matter that I have to have 3 different red wine glasses to get the most from my reds? I don't want to waste expensive wine. So you're wondering if you're going to get a lesser expression in the wrong type of glass.
Question on do glasses matter? Do they change it? The answer is yes. Is there a right answer and a wrong answer? No. Now, I've sat with Maximilian Riedel. We have some Riedel glasses here, and we've gone through the process. And if you taste the wine in different glasses, it's going to taste a little different. And now for you to say which one you like best, it's okay. Doesn't really matter much. I tend to drink a lot of wine out of tumblers when I'm at home, of not even having the nice stemware. And it's really, there's no right answer to it. And I think that's one of the key things about wine for people to appreciate is, don't think there's any rules to it. There's nothing hard and fast rule except for what makes you most happy.
I totally agree with that. If you love having different wine glasses, like all the wine, if you love having different kinds of wine glasses at your home, that's awesome. You're going to get a different expression. But if you don't, getting something universal like these beautiful Riedels is a perfect option, and that's kind of how my husband and I live. And then my sister Allie and her husband kind of live a different way, where they really like having a bunch of different wine glasses that show expressions differently. So we love going to dinner at their house so we can test it out. But then when you come to our house, we have mostly this type of glass. So it's totally an opinion-based thing.
Personal preference. And also it's just like, what do you enjoy drinking out of? And what do you want to clean at the end
what do
of
you
the
want to
day?
clean at the end of it?
Because I'll tell you, while we have different glasses, I don't love cleaning them all.
Right.
I don't.
There's a question that says, what wine do you drink alone without food? And ultimately, I drink mostly Chardonnay when I'm home alone, with or without food. And I love red wines. Our Charles Wetmore Cabernet we'll talk a little bit more about as we go forward. But as a course of the job that we do, I put so much big, rich, awesome, yummy red wine in my mouth as part of the blending process, as part of how the wines go together, that I sort of get my fix there, right? And I love the texture of them. But when I come home, I'm 90% white wine and 95% of that is Chardonnay. My favorite, sure, you could say we're biased. We've got a great family history with Chardonnay, but you know what? Chardonnay's the best grape out there. You can tell everybody.
I do have to say, when Allie told me that we were drinking Charles Wetmore tonight, it's 100 degrees outside. It's a heat wave. We are hot. I almost took a sigh there because I was like, oh, I could really use a cold glass of Chardonnay.
We can fix that problem.
But then I tasted the Charles Wetmore and I was like, oh my gosh. And see now it's gone.
It's pretty yummy though.
I have drank the whole glass.
Story Coffee Co. Hey Paul is asking, are any of the Wente Chardonnays still natural fermentation?
So the Nth Degree Chardonnay predominantly is, as well as our Heritage Chardonnay, which we haven't really released yet. And so they're not 100% done natural fermentation, but a good hunk of it is. And we'll always make wines in many different styles throughout. Nikki, on average, how many Chardonnay picks do you think we do?
Oh my gosh. Probably close to 100.
I was going to say 100, right? There's close to 100 times throughout the harvest that we'll pick Chardonnay, and each one comes in and you get to play with the possible different expressions, stainless steel versus different oak versus new oak versus old oak, and just different the likes, different natural yeast, different yeast that are, that you're bringing in, selected yeast. So there's so much playground for us to have. Well, we're farming about 2,500 acres, which isn't tiny, but at the same time, it's small enough that Nikki walks every block during harvest, darn near every day. That's probably a stretch, but every block, every week, I guarantee it. Mm-hmm. And I used to do that year in, year out, and I get to step back a little bit because she's doing such an awesome job. And so it's really fun because there's enough scale to have fun, but it's still small enough that our fingerprints, there's family fingerprints, and we've got a great team of people at Wente Vineyard, so the greater family fingerprints all over it. And so we get to have fun, but make a lot of good, yummy wines.
I've seen people from East Lansing, Rhode Island, Montreal, all over the place. So thanks for shouting out where you're watching from.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Love it, love it. What do you guys think? Is it time for a song?
Too early.
Too early?
Too soon. Are you singing?
You're
singing.
Tell us about Charles Wetmore, the birth of Charles Wetmore.
The Charles Wetmore Cabernet?
Yeah.
Well, so Charles Wetmore Cabernet, it's a single vineyard Cabernet that comes from Charles Wetmore Vineyard, and it's in the gravelly flat, the valley on the south side of Livermore.
The UK.
And there we have planted also a little Petit Verdot, a little Barbera, a little Petit Syrah, a little Merlot, and a little Malbec. And so it really gives us the ability, and Cabernet Franc now planted in the flat there. So it gives us the ability in any given year to blend. And it's pretty rare that you'll have a Cabernet that comes from Wente Vineyards. It's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, because blending just makes things better. And ultimately, when I got here in 2002, every year making wine, I always thought, gosh, the earlier you blend, the better it is. Earlier you blend, the better it is. And now I'd say probably half of the Cabernets that are coming in, fair estimate, that we're co-fermenting. Right. And so we'll say, okay, if this tank has 10 tons of fruit going into it, we'll tell Nikki, okay, we want 8 tons of Cabernet and 2 tons of Malbec, or 8 tons of Cabernet and a ton of Malbec and a ton of Petit Verdot. So you get to do this co-fermentation, which really helps to develop these cool flavors, the cool colors that are coming through into the wines. And at the end of the day, we want wines that have elegance and balance to it. We want the sense of place of the vineyard to shine through. And we want the varietal typicity. We want it to taste like Cabernet. But at the end of the day, it's really about yumminess, right? We want to make wines that are yummy, taste good. So
this is yummy.
Yeah.
Touché.
I'm like creeping everyone on Instagram out. So there's I think this is the most questions we've ever gotten. So approximately, Monique would like to know, and other people have also said they're interested in her question. Approximately how many clusters of grapes does it take to make a bottle of wine?
Oh, I just answered this question to Katie.
It's all you.
Shoot. Okay, so 1 ton of grapes is about 150 gallons, and that would be approximately 2 barrels. A barrel is 25 cases of wine. So then 2 barrels is 50 cases of wine. So then divide that by.
You got to get back to the cluster count, and you got to go into it.
Ooh, this is tough.
I'd like about this many clusters. Then you squeeze it all and get in there.
I can tell you in pounds.
And it really depends because Zinfandel can have these huge clusters. Cabernet have these nice little tight clusters. Or Merlot can have sort of a scraggly looser. And so it really depends from the number of clusters and the different sizes of berries. And we're farming about 30 different cultivars of grapes, 30 different types out there, and they're all different. And even different clones, different sort of subtypes of each of those can be different.
Okay. The next question is, what music do you listen to when you're blending wine?
It really depends. What music do you listen to when you're blending wine? It really depends what sort of mood, what type of wine in there. Been doing Little Feat a lot, and I dig that. I'm always on Zeppelin, is always in my repertoire as it's coming through. Michael Franti's one of my favorite. What's his name? Jason Isbell. So Jason Isbell just released his new album. He is just hands down one of my favorites. Jason Isbell and the 300 Unit. One of the best songwriters out there. Speaking of the best songwriters, here's to John Prine, who's probably one of the best of all time. So
I just calculated it. 3.3 pounds of grapes would be one bottle, approximately, give or take.
Fair. 3.3 and the range of the pounds per cluster or clusters. It's probably, you can go from a third of a pound, a quarter of a pound up through.
Tyson says 3 to 10 clusters per bottle, depending on the varietal. Tyson,
gotcha.
You should come work in winemaking. Tyson, this is great.
Tyson, you're hired.
You're hired.
There's a question, how do you stay in shape surrounded with great wine? My answer is yoga. And I try and practice yoga every day. And that just keeps me healthy and sane. And then during the winter season, I want to get on my telemarks and go backcountry skiing or go inbound skiing. And so trying to stay in shape all year long in order to go conquer mountains all winter long. How do you stay in shape?
I don't know if you heard him, but I'm walking a lot.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke about that's why you're small, because you walk everything, you're blocked.
Every row.
That's true.
I have named every plant.
She sings to them too.
I sing to them. It makes them happy. We want to make our wines happy. Happy wines make happy customers.
Everything in math is hard.
Math is hard.
What does winemaking teach you about life?
Ooh.
That was a good question. There's so many questions.
What does winemaking teach you about life? I spend a lot of time during harvest thinking about the Serenity Prayer, some semblance of the Serenity Prayer, and sort of the yin and the yang of Taoism, so to speak, of knowing what you can control and knowing what you can't, right? And control the controllables, but also you've got to let it go that Mother Nature bats last, and we're farming grapes, we're working with the weather, going through. One of my first mentors in farming grapes said, look, yeah, Mother Nature bats last, but you never blame the weather. So you're working with the weather and the likes, but ultimately, so taught about life is, know when to paddle and know when to go with the flow overall. It's my best answer.
I think that was a great answer.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I heard a question. How do you pronounce Wente? It's Wente.
Wente.
If you want to make us fancy, you could say Wente, which happens a lot, and we accept it. But we all say Wente.
We say Wente.
We sure do. We do.
We can be fancy though. And back in the day, we were probably
Wente.
German. So I see another question about music. I'm just like, I feel like we should whip out the guitar.
What about the guitar? What's the other music question?
What are the parallels between wine and music? Which I think you talked about a little bit.
Parallels between wine and music is its sense data coming in, right? And now with the wine, it's about what does it smell like? Obviously, what does it look like? And what does it smell like? And what does it taste like? And how this all works together. And the same with the sound coming in of like how all of the different pieces work together to create something, whether it's multiple notes or whether it's multiple instruments, whether it's a full band, whether it's a full orchestra. Same with the different facets that come in and the bass and the drums, like the tannins and the acidity, and then all the different other flavors and how they come in and work well together. So I find that blending wine, where you're literally pouring in some of this, pouring in some of this, seeing how it tastes, pouring in this, seeing how it tastes, and in the studio mixing and making songs, there's such incredible parallels of how those all come together. And it's really about how you take different parts and make something better.
Yeah. I agree. And Mick wants to know if you ever play your guitar to the vines. Front porch.
Front porch, right? There's what do we have there? What's Malvasia right off the front lawn?
Yeah.
We have Cabernet out here. There's some Cab Franc out here. We have some Merlot out there. We have some Semillon out there. So the vines do regularly hear it. And sometimes even my dad is a great horseman, and one of his loves is being on horseback on our ranch here. And sometimes I'll throw a little backpack guitar on as we ride up through the vineyards and through the hills and play some music up there and the likes. And so sometimes the vine gets some guitar.
What about, should we give some guitar to these people?
Some guitar to these
To the
people.
people. To the
To
people.
those people.
To you people.
This is my guitar that I've had since
This is a
I was
whole.
22 and played right through it.
And you taught yourself to play, didn't you?
Taught myself to play with Jim Hurley. I guess there's been teachers everywhere, right? And one of the things, this might be shocking, is that musicians tend to like wine. And so I invite people over, talented people over. They enjoy some wine, and great friendships are made that way. And so every Tuesday night for basically the time I was 22, 23 to 35, almost every Tuesday night, we'd have a jam night at the house, and just phenomenal musicians would come over. And I was regularly the dead worst musician in the group. And that's always the best way to fly, because you have just talented people around you. Same with skiing. I love being the worst skier in the group, because that means you're getting better and you're just sort of always working and keep up and training and the likes. So this is, I started taking music lessons. So I self-taught now, taught from everybody, but music lessons from Jim Hurley. If you're out there, Mr. Hurley, I salute you. And I really started studying jazz and jazz guitar, and really looking at how Django played the guitar, but then also studying Gershwin a little bit, and just like learning music, right? Music theory and the likes, and then how it comes together. And so this song is Phil's Head, after their father Phil, because he has such incredible creativity in his head. And it's basically just ripping off what Gershwin would do, but fingering and playing it the way that Django would. So it has a melody, usually playing on the violin behind, and so I'm going to do a little bit of that coming through, but this is Phil's Head.
Nikki's on the
To Uncle Phil. Nikki's on the violin, the air violin.
Yeah. You heard it.
Now I really wish I had the violin here. Sweet daddy.
Woo! Does he realize that you wrote your first song ever after his head? Does he know that? That's really like a, I don't know.
I think he's
Pretty cool
heard
inspiration.
that, but sometimes he just like, that's just Carl being
It's too much
musically
for
weird.
him
Yeah,
to
like,
grab
he does now.
Yeah, he does now. I'm sure he's on here. I did see that some people said that music and wine have in common feelings and emotions, making great friends together through it, creativity, imagination, Grapes are the instrument and wine is the music. Cool things that people are writing in here right now. Keep it up. Keep your comments coming. I love it.
Allie wants to sing soon.
No. We need a Wente theme song, they say.
What should it be?
Wine makes me happy.
Wine makes me happy. You notice how they both disappear out of the frame? It's just I'm playing music there. Come on, there we go. Come on, sing, girl.
No way. No way,
She said no
Marley.
way, but one day I'm gonna get. They're both actually really phenomenal singers, and one day they're gonna be singing on this thing.
So I feel like you talked about it a little bit, but everyone wants to know how. How did you make the hole in your guitar?
Love.
Yeah, with love.
Strum through it? Or?
Literally just strumming through it, right? And so just by doing that, and so regularly just rhythm guitar, and played in a lot of bands where we hadn't played a lot together. And one of the roles that I would play is just holding people together. And so really when you're trying to get everyone's attention and get it there, like, okay, like this. And so literally just right through. And some people said you should put a pick guard up there, but no, this is what makes the guitar awesome. Want to give a quick shout out to Kenny Williams, who's the one that helped to hold this baby together, because it's still, you can get little pieces of the guitar that keep coming off. But there's really great luthiers, great instrument makers here in Livermore. We have two national laboratories. It creates one of the highest PhD per capita in the nation around here. So incredible amount of smart people into food, into wine, into music, into instrument making. And so really cool place to be. Can you guys tell I love my home?
You started something on Instagram now. Everyone wants to hear Nikki sing.
No, what?
Yeah, I'm kidding. They said both of us, but just Nikki.
No, I was like, when? He said Allie. He said Allie.
So, yeah, no, both of y'all. Found a 1983 dry Chenin Blanc in the wine rack. When do we stop making that wine? My answer is in 1983, I was 6 years old, and these two weren't even around yet, and I don't know the answer to that. And this is where I always phone Phil, and that's what Phil's head, because it's all there. And like Phil's kids call him Philopedia sometimes because he's just a wealth of knowledge. And I regularly, I'm reading books or listening to books on Audible most constantly. And Phil and I trade books regularly. And anytime I'm ready for a new book, I'll just hit Phil up and say, hey, what should I do next? And I think it was it Decision in Philadelphia, or I forget the exact name of it, but just going through the Constitutional Convention and sort of how it all came to be, and the discord, and how amazing it was that we got to the place post-revolution, got to the place where we have a constitution that is good and stood the test of time as long as it has. I was getting a little down the hole of government. Let's stay out of that for a minute.
One more question. Did you love growing up in Livermore?
I love growing up in Livermore. I did, and there were, there were times where the family's been here growing grapes and making wine for a long time. Our grandfather, Phil, Eric, and Carolyn's father, is my namesake, Karl Wente, and went to school right next to Karl Wente Park. So I had that same name. I'm going to school as a kid. You get some teasing, you get some stuff going on of like, but at the same time, it's such an awesome place to be. And I think one of the awesome parts about growing up and growing up with my mom and dad and just my dad's passion for horses. And so spent darn near every Saturday, that's probably an exaggeration, but every other Saturday getting up early, going, saddling horses and riding the ranch. And so gave such a great appreciation for the land itself. And I think the philosophy of the family, although we've never really talked about it overtly like that, Nikki and I do because we're farming grapes together, but just you take care of the land, it'll take care of you, right? And whether my Aunt Carolyn has a phenomenal garden, phenomenal chef all the way through. We've got a great garden out at the restaurant, have a small little garden out here in Wine Barrels that doesn't get nearly enough attention, but ultimately take care of the land, it'll take care of you, sort of a philosophy to live by.
Perfect. And I saw a comment that I just want to read out from V4 Beauty Art. You love what Wente does for the community, children, and the arts. So thank you. We had a lot of fun this past Friday handing out art kits to local kids to give them some fun to do.
Right.
Why haven't we dedicated a wine to the horses?
That's a great question.
So, we never really thought.
And now, Allie, as the marketer, you are in charge. Maybe that can be our generation wine. I've been trying to pitch a 5th generation wine, and I'm working on a pitch deck because that's how they do it these days. But I'm a farmer, so pitch decks are not easy.
I told her I would do it for her, but
Yeah, exactly.
I know, but she's so busy.
She needs to learn
not that I'm not busy.
to-
I can't ask her.
your guitar lessons in 4th grade. You took guitar lessons in 4th grade.
So,
Mom is here to
yeah,
remind
thank you.
Carl.
So my mother is making sure, keeping me honest, and she did point out that I took guitar lessons in 4th grade, and so I did, and then I took a long time off of guitar lessons and came back to it a little bit later in life.
Yeah,
And
so I too took violin lessons in 4th grade and asked me if I know how to play the violin.
Yeah. I took piano for 7 years and I took trumpet for 3 and I cannot play.
Do you still have a
either.
trumpet?
I don't know what happened to the
No,
trumpet.
we sold those.
Sold it.
I have
Probably gave it.
I have grandfather Carl's saxophone still.
Can you play it?
That's pretty cool.
I played saxophone in the junior high band.
Cool.
I can't play it
Let's
very
get that
well,
back out.
right?
I was
Next
so
challenge.
bad at the clarinet.
Okay, I feel like we got closing song.
Closing song? What should it be?
Closing time.
Look at them. Are you gonna sing?
No, I'm not gonna
Why
sing.
not?
I'm not gonna sing.
You know your guitar.
Carl and I jam out, but just together. This is not for
Just
everybody.
pretend like nobody's here.
No. Just dance to it.
I'm not singing it. The night the land is on and the moon. Get in here, the light you see. Get in here. I won't cry. I won't cry. No, I won't shed a tear. Just as long as you stand by me. Darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. I'll stand now. Won't you stand by me? We never young trouble. Won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. I'll stand now. Won't you stand by me? In the sky, where we look upon, tumble and fall, and the mountains should tumble to the sea. I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. Darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Won't you stand by me? Never young trouble. Won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Won't you stand by me? I got got you to do it.
Only for him. None of you heard it
Very
anyway.
quiet. Very quiet.
Awesome cousins.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much for joining. Forget you heard that last bit.
Got him. How are the three of us related? Cousins, first cousins, these two sisters.
Can you see the resemblance? I feel like it's pretty strong.
I know, I feel like we all kind of do look alike. We have the same color hair at least.
We all have the same beard for sure.
Right.
We have as much gray hair in our head hair as he does
Thank
in
you,
his beard.
Andrea. Well, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it. Stay safe. Enjoy wine. Rock on.
Rock on.
Rock on.
Bye.